most people think that success comes from what you know, but I'd be willing to tell you that it's more about the connections and who you connect with that count and how you show up in those moments with the people that you connect with. And that's why I have today's guest with me today. She has built a global presence by not being the loudest person in the room, but by being consistent, intentional, and unforgettable. So my guest today is Goldie Chan, and she is known as the Oprah of LinkedIn. And we're going to get into that because that just fascinated me. But also what fascinated me about Goldie is how her relationships and her conversations have really built her and shaped her success. So that's what we're going to get into because we're all about relationships. Now, she's also an author of the book called Personal Branding for Introverts. I love that because there you go. Yes, because most people will say, I'm an introvert. And there you go. So Goldie has the book for you. It's now available for sale. And we're going to find out where we can get that book as well. She's the founder of the company Warm Robots, which is an award-winning social strategy company. And she has been featured in New York Times, Entrepreneur, NASDAQ, Fast Company, and a lot more. So those are some pretty impressive magazines. I know I read them. So she is valued for her fresh approach to brand insights. She has over 500,000 followers across her platforms. She helps both Fortune 500 and individual leaders build lasting community and presence through storytelling. And I love that because it's all about the storytelling these days. So thank you for being here with us, Goldie. I'm so happy to have you all the way from California.
I know. I'm excited to be here. I will say this. Normally, LA is beautiful and sunny, and today it is oddly very foggy and very overcast. So, less of a fan of that.
Well, there's always room for you in Florida, and I'm a realtor. I can make that happen. I don't think that's going to happen.
No. I will say, though, I was in Florida in, gosh, what was it? It was several years ago, but I was in Florida for the NASA program, and NASA launch, and that was so cool.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
about 3 hours away from where I'm at. I'm in North
Okay.
Florida. So,
I
yeah,
know Florida is very big.
it's very big. It's very big. So, I wanted to get started by asking you because it grabbed my attention when I said she's the Oprah of LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is
Yes.
everything to me. I love LinkedIn. So, can you tell us the story behind how you got that little monoc? Like, how did you get that?
Okay. Yes. So I had worked for over a decade in digital marketing. And in 2017, I was taking a month off from work. I'd gone all the way, climbed the career ladder, gotten all the way up to head of marketing. And I was taking a month off between roles. I was going to apply for another head of marketing job. And I got into the LinkedIn video beta. And I decided I'm going to make videos. And I thought this number of videos was maybe two, maybe 10 at most. And I ended up creating over 800 daily consecutive videos. And this is pre-AI. So this was all me creating it,
Yes.
all me scheduling it, editing it, and throwing it onto LinkedIn. And during this process, a lot of really fascinating career doors open for me and accolades. And one of them was that the Huffington Post called me the Oprah of LinkedIn because I was always in conversation with people. I was always having conversations with different people about, their lives or their work or what they thought about this brand or that brand. And I was traveling a lot and having a lot of these conversations on the go. So I got the nickname the Oprah of LinkedIn, much like Oprah has her talk show and does those conversations.
That's great. So were you talking about marketing or what were you talking about in these conversations?
So I want to say the first 30 to 50 videos I did were all on pop culture branding and marketing. So they were all on thinking about different pop culture phenomenon or things that we just see in the US. It's like let's think about trains, the history of trains in the US, right? How are trains advertised in the US? How what are, if you ever see those paste posters, right, on different areas where you see them advertise, I don't know, beauty brands or movies, and what is the history of those? Where did those come from? And so I was doing a lot of history of that and then pop culture. So I live in Los Angeles and we have all the theme parks. So, for example, Simpsons, right, which is a very classic and iconic American cartoon show. There's there's so much that you can talk about. So that's what I was talking about was a lot of that. Plus simply how are you building your brand? So what are ways to build your brand? And from that evolved the fact that I now focus on personal branding, branding and storytelling in general.
So tell us a little bit about how you brand yourself on LinkedIn specifically, and
Yes.
talk about a little bit about how the storytelling comes into play.
Yes. So I think the way I brand myself on LinkedIn has evolved over time as so many of us change and evolve throughout our careers, right? We have so many different pivots and restarts. And when I started creating my brand on LinkedIn, I'd love to tell you it was strategic. It was not. I just was excited and interested in creating videos. So that's what I did. I created videos. I created over 800 videos. And
I
throughout this
can't imagine
process,
800.
I know I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I, throughout this process of creating so many hundreds of videos, right? Literally hundreds of videos throughout this very wild and weird process, I discovered my own brand and I discovered what I wanted to be known as. So my brand these days on LinkedIn is definitely someone who knows about B2B marketing, who knows about branding, who knows about marketing in general for corporations and major brands, who talks about creativity, who talks about personal branding. So I've kind of focused down on those areas of interest for myself and what I want to be known for. Also, because on LinkedIn, it's helpful to narrow down, right? It's helpful to have a focus because when you have too many, and what I also just mentioned, they're connected. Those are connected ideas. When you have too many things on LinkedIn that are disconnected, it becomes really hard for the LinkedIn algorithm too to know where to place you. So it's really nice if you have a very specific focus on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that was the hardest thing for me. And I have all the coaches saying I was too spread out. It's like I'm known as a realtor, but I also have a podcast that isn't about real estate. So it was like it was very difficult to try to figure out how to bring the two together so that it doesn't confuse the audience.
Right. And I'm so glad you said that because I think one really important part of a personal brand is the through line through a story, right? It's that red thread that you pull through the different pieces. So while it seems like real estate and your podcast are vastly different, they're not, right? There's, of course, a through line that connects those two and the reasons and the you behind it that connects those two. And that's what you need to express on a platform like LinkedIn is what is the connector? What is the you behind it? And I always, I like to do this exercise because people look at the word personal, right? And personal branding. And I think so many people do a persona, right? They do a mask. But I think what is better and what is more helpful is you think about the person behind personal branding, right? You think about the you behind personal branding.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I know for me, it was knowing that the common thread was it's all about relationships. I don't go out there and do what they say, farming, neighborhoods, people I don't even know, random people. To me, it's all about the people who I have connected with already, those relationships. And so that was more important to me. And so that's why the common thread is it's all about the relationships and the connections. That's what this show was all about, is how your connections are your power move. And I always say that's my tagline. It's because they are. That's how you succeed in life, through your connections.
And I think it would be very odd to be a real estate agent and not to value connections, right? And not to be a successful working real estate agent and not to value connections, because how else are you going to get that work? And I say this based off only really watching a lot of Netflix reality TV shows on real estate agents.
Those aren't right.
Those shows aren't real, and I know, but So much of it, I think underlying though is still the connections that
True.
they have,
Yeah.
the relationships that they have to clients and potential clients. I do believe that part is very real.
And that's true. I mean, it's like my clients truly become my friends. They really become my friends.
Yes.
It's like I don't
Yes.
refer them to my clients anymore. They're like, oh, my friend over there. Oh, yeah. Well, they were once my customer and then I got to know them and now they're my friends. So, yeah. So, take me back to some of your earliest connections and how they might have opened some doors for you, maybe shifted the trajectory of where you've landed.
Yes. So I will say I want to shout out one person in particular. So when I first started creating content on LinkedIn, this was before people realized that you could even do this, right? I had so much hate mail I was getting from people who were saying, why are you making videos here? Nobody wants to see any of this. Go to Facebook, which is the funniest hate comment, truly. It's to go to Facebook. And I got so much of that. I got so much of that. And obviously I have green hair. So you can only imagine
I
what
love
people
your
are.
green hair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But people are very odd about things that are different, right? But I thought it was a fascinating time because I was so early that some brands were also looking and thinking, oh, how could we jump into this interesting new creator universe on LinkedIn early? And one of the people that connected with me very early on, her name is Ronnie Mani, which is also just a delightful name in general. And she was one of the first people to bring me into the Adobe ecosystem. So I still to this day, years later, almost a decade later, I am still an ambassador for Adobe. And I still work in the ecosystem doing strategy and doing ambassador work. And the reason why is because of one person. It's because of Roddy. And she found me on LinkedIn and said, I really like your videos. How would you like to work with Adobe? And Adobe is one of my dream brands, right?
Oh, God.
I've used Photoshop since college. Like I'm definitely a super fan through
So
and
she was just
through.
some random who found you on LinkedIn.
She just found me on LinkedIn and she reached out to me and said, let's have a conversation. Like, how would you like to just talk and maybe we can work on LinkedIn? And she is now a very dear friend of mine. And I am very close to her. And this is through the fact that we started to work together, but then what a wonderful and delightful person she is. So then we became friends and we're still friends. So even if I stop working with Adobe, I will still be her friend. And that is, to me, the power of connections is that you can meet somebody and then you don't know that it will open up a wide door, which is why I try to have a lot of conversations with different people because you never know where those conversations will take you.
So, in the moment when she reached out to you in the beginning, did you
Yes.
realize and recognize instantly that this is a big opportunity, or did you only see it as, well, maybe this might impact me later? I mean, how did you feel about that?
Well, I thought it's Adobe, so I thought this is a big opportunity. So
Well, did you even
I,
think she was real? I mean, I would have said,
you know what?
sure.
I did have to look her up because I wasn't sure if she was
Yeah,
real and I wasn't sure if it was a scam, which,
exactly. That's my
there's a
point.
lot of unfortunate scam things on the internet. You have to be safe, you have to be thoughtful. And even today, so now I have, and at the time, I had so many less followers, right? I think at the time, when I was just starting out, maybe I had 3,000 followers. And now on LinkedIn, I have over 106,000.
Oh, you have a lot.
Yeah, I'm in the six figures now. But, at the time, I'll say this, at the time I thought 3,000 was a lot of followers. I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm in the four-figure follower zone, right? And and I was already getting some odd messages, I think because I was creating so prolifically, but now I get very intense odd messages. So I have to be very careful and thoughtful about who reaches out to me. And I'll say, even for podcasts, I'll throw this out there. Even for podcasts, I will get people say, you can guest on my podcast for $5,000, which is and I don't know a single podcast that is, I mean, at least not the ones that have reached out to me and asked me to pay, that is worth paying $5,000
Yeah.
to guest on, right?
Yeah.
And that's not saying that the podcast itself is not valid, et cetera, but just that asking your guests for that in an ecosystem that does not ask for pay in that way is just a little distasteful to me.
Just a bit.
Yeah. Yes.
I know there are some models that are like that. Mine obviously is not. I'm honored to have my guest on the show because I want to offer value to the people who are listening and
Yes.
help people grow their own businesses. It's not about real estate, as I mentioned. So it's who's ever out there, whether you're selling widgets or candles or whatever you're selling. It's like,
Yes.
here's some great advice. So speaking of that great advice and how you went from
Yes.
3,000 to the six figures and beyond,
Yes.
what would you give advice for somebody who is maybe just starting out in LinkedIn or they have a couple thousand followers? What is the best advice you can give them for how to grow their followers on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So one thing that is a concrete tip that I'll give out today is identify 5 to 10 different people who are in your industry niche or just people you want to connect with, right? So maybe you're interested in a certain industry. You want to move into that industry. That is your next role or that is your next leap or they're your client base. Identify 5 to 10 of those people and make sure that they have, I would say, especially under 1 million followers on LinkedIn. And there's not that many that have that, but make sure that they have especially under 500,000 followers. And it's better if they have the 4 figures to 5 figure follower count instead, because then they will actually respond to you. They'll take the time to respond personally. And you want to start to comment on these different people's profiles and just say nice comments and be really thoughtful about it. I am such a proponent of not automating things. So don't automate these comments so that way you can see what they're actually saying. So if it comes up in conversation, you'll say, oh no, I did see you posted about this, right? And it's
Right.
so genuine and real. But when you identify those people and you start to comment, something magical happens. You start to show up in the feed for similar people like that, or you start getting delivered more people like that. So you can start commenting on more, you can start being more involved. And some of those people will start following you and commenting on your content
Oh,
if you
yes.
are starting to post. So that
Mhm.
is one very solid tip you can start literally today.
And that is great advice. In fact, my podcast manager who lives in another country contacted me this morning to say, by the way, have you looked at your LinkedIn today? Because you're getting some comments, a lot of comments on one of the posts that we had
Right.
recently. And so I jumped on it. I made comments to the people who are making comments. It's like interact with the people who are interacting with you. They're interested.
Yeah.
When you
I think that it is also really good to respond to all the comments that you get. So one really basic way to increase engagement on LinkedIn is to make sure that you are responding to all of the comments that you are getting on your content. Now, I am guilty of not always responding because I personally respond. And so as we talked about before in the green room, I don't always have time to respond to everything right away. So I will try to go back and go to older
right.
posts and respond, but it's hard to keep up with everything
Can be.
all the time, of course. But it's good to respond if you can, especially if you're growing. If you're starting to grow your profile, taking that time to respond to any comments you get really thoughtfully is a good way to start. Also, once again, showing up more in the LinkedIn algorithm itself.
So how does that algorithm work for LinkedIn? Is it by the how many comments you're doing? Is it recognizing your comments?
So I just read an article by someone who's internal at LinkedIn, and so they shared that and of course, algorithm changes week to week, month to month, right? But right now, as it stands, one of the things that LinkedIn is trying to prioritize is real and authentic comments. So they want to see that you are getting individual, personalized comments from different people. So they're trying to protect against what are called LinkedIn pods, which is groups of people who gather and comment on each other's posts to increase engagement, and also automated spam comments, right? Which are technical and they just spam a bunch of like cool, yay, great, comments. And LinkedIn is trying to fight against those. So they will prioritize in the feed higher if they believe that you're getting real and genuine authentic comments from real profiles. They are also going to try to prioritize too if you are, yes, if you are responding back to comments that you're getting, if you are in conversation, if you are writing or making videos that are also original pieces of content. So they want to also see more original pieces of content. So less of the ads and more of the original thought pieces.
That's great advice that you're giving right there. I hope y'all know that was the nuggets for today. It's like, I've heard a few of them, but that's a very good one. Those comments are when I mentioned that my manager, he called me up to say, hey, look, by the way, you're getting some comments. You need to make some comments back. I'm like, I just woke up. You're on a different time zone. It's like, yes, but when you're only one person, but it's so important to make those comments. It is so important. So
important.
That is a really good one. So were there ever any times when there was a connection that you missed? In other words, you just didn't nurture it, you overlooked it, and later you thought, oh, that one could have been significant.
Yeah, you know what? I will say this. If you ever blow up in the way that I blew up in 2017, 2018, you will suddenly get a flood of opportunities, and which is a blessing, of course. Of course, a blessing. Just say that first. Very grateful.
Well, I'm waiting to blow up.
Right. And I'm sure you will have that moment happen for you. But even if you blow up in a small way, you'll suddenly get like an influx of opportunities. And the issue with getting an influx of opportunities, especially if you are a solopreneur, right, is that you don't have the infrastructure to handle a flood of opportunities. And at the time, I did not have the infrastructure to handle a flood of opportunities. So there were so many times people would reach out and people would ask me to do something, and I would just not see it until a week later. I would not see it until a month later because I was getting so many different messages at the time. And so many different messages I had to weed through because so much of it was not anything that was real or valid. So there were a couple of brands and companies that I wish I had been more thoughtful and on top of and responsive to that I missed out on because I did not have that infrastructure. So to me, one of the things that now I think about a lot is how are you building infrastructure so you can be successful? And infrastructure is a fancy way of saying, how can you have a team that you can rely on? Because I believe in hiring humans that can help you in the right ways. And for some of my friends too, they, at this point, and this is outside of the LinkedIn universe and the conversation we're having here, but they have AI that they've trained to become that team too. So there are many different ways to address needing a team on the back end. And once again, I'm a big fan of hiring people to be that team, but there's definitely technology that can make things easier too. Yeah.
And speaking of the technology, I see a lot of times on LinkedIn and other sites where people are making comments. And it's so obvious that it's not you speaking, people.
Yeah. Yes.
I recognize that's an AI, and the overuse of the word. I don't know if anybody notices this but me. I can't be. It just can't be.
Yeah.
The overuse of the word clarity. Do you notice that? Like I notice that every other paragraph that people are writing is it's clarity. I'm like, would y'all please get off of AI?
Yes. Yes. And I think that's so funny because one of the C's in my book for personal writing for introverts is clarity. And not because of that. It's just I like that word. But yes, I have noticed that it's overused. I will say the other word that is often overused, and I don't know if this is AI, but this is just overused, is authentic. Yes. And the M dash, of course.
It's just be you. Be yourself.
Yeah. Be
That's
yourself.
authentic. But yeah.
Be yourself.
Be yourself. Yeah. Just be yourself. Okay. So when someone you meet for the first time, whether it's online or in person, what do you pay attention to first?
When I meet someone for the first time online or in person, you know what? I'm such a big energy person. I'm always curious if the vibes match, right? Which is, I think, a fun way of saying that. And I judge this for also people I bring onto my own team that I partner with and I work with is, do we have a similar understanding of what we would both need from a specific interaction? Do we have the right energy levels that match so it's not an overwhelming interaction? Because I am an introvert and I'm an introvert with social anxiety. And so I oftentimes kind of judge and sense the energy of somebody that I meet for the first time. And that's a lot of what I look at because also you can't judge a book by its cover. So judging people by the way they're dressed or judging people by the way the words that they say, I don't try to judge people necessarily by that, but I do judge by the energy that they bring to the table.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting because your persona is high energy and
Yes.
an introvert.
Yes, and I know, and people are always surprised when I say I'm an introvert, but I will be the first person to tell you that one of my favorite things to do when I travel, especially travel for speaking, is I love to get a bag of hot Cheetos and lay out a towel and eat hot Cheetos on a towel in the hotel room.
I'll
Because you
remember
have to,
that.
you have to have a towel because then it just gets the crumbs everywhere. So
It's the funniest thing.
I mean, I don't lay them out, but I put the bag on the towel so then if there's the crumbs, they don't get all over the place, right?
So, have you ever had a relationship that you've met through online, in particular, maybe LinkedIn, that it really just started something really small, but then it really just turned into something really impactful for you?
Yes, I've had so many, as an introvert that spends a lot of time online, I've had a lot of my initial relationships start on LinkedIn, and they've started from either people reach out to me or I found other people. I'll say one really beautiful one that came to fruition in January is there's a wonderful creator slash librarian online. His name is Michael Threets. He is known as the internet's librarian. He's the new Reading Rainbow host who replaced LeVar Burton. And we met off of Threads of all places. So we met off the platform Threads, and I was talking about how no one showed up to a book event I had in Seattle. So I've been doing a lot of book events because my book just came out end of October, and no one showed up to my event in Seattle. And I did a post about it, and it went viral. Right. It went very viral. I was not trying to write a viral post. It just went viral. And he was one of the people that discovered it. And because of it, I was able to do this really beautiful in conversation fireside chat with him in person in San Francisco at a beautiful bookstore in San Francisco, Chinatown. And because he's a local to the Bay Area, he was able to co-host that with me. And we would have never met each other if had not been for the internet. And he has, just to give you an idea of impact, he has literally millions and millions of followers, right? And his videos, his posts consistently go viral, consistently have millions and millions of views. So this was somebody that we spoke together at this event, and that room was full, right? That room was full to the brim of
Made up for
people.
the one that all those people missed.
And it made up for the one that people did not show up to, but also it was delightful because I was able to have a beautiful conversation with someone who has a lovely personality and is a very thoughtful librarian, right? Like, how fun is that?
That's a cool story. That's so cool.
Yes.
So
Yes.
for people who are listening and they feel like, they're putting themselves out there, they're doing everything they can, but they're just not getting the traction. What might they be missing?
So I see so oftentimes, especially right now, an over reliance on AI. Right. And I mean that so literally because I see so many people where they write all of their posts using AI with zero human oversight. And because of that, I'm seeing these posts, especially on LinkedIn, that look exactly the same. Just truly exact carbon copies of each other with no original insight at all, with no personality in them, with none of that person, right, that I talked about before, with none of them in it. And what we like as humans, what we enjoy as humans is we enjoy a little bit of that messiness. We enjoy a little bit of that imperfection. I was speaking with another creator who I think has like 300,000 followers on LinkedIn or something like that. And he says that he now tries to put in little spelling mistakes into his LinkedIn posts. He tries to have errors because there is such a focus on perfection on LinkedIn that people like the little bits of imperfection. And I have been personally experimenting with, with writing short form, long form, just trying to do different kinds of posts. And of course, not all of my posts do well, but I've noticed that when I mix it up, it seems that more of them are doing a little bit better, which is always good to see. So, and a lot of it is traction over time. So people don't know this, or maybe they do, but the first 30 to 60 of my videos, right? And that's 30 to 60 pieces of content. They got maybe a max of like 1,000 views, right? Maybe 100 views, maybe five, especially the first like 10 to 15 videos I did were maybe 10 to 15 likes. And that's a lot, right? That was a lot at the time.
Uh-huh.
And most people don't think that because they think, oh, it immediately went viral, immediately got probably millions of views. And that wasn't until later.
Oh, that's so good. So as your brand, Goldie, is growing, it's growing.
Right.
Are you thinking about the next level of relationships and what you want to build?
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that and I'm so glad you're focused on relationships because so many people forget the relationships. And as a person focused on personal branding, right? As my expertise is in that area, I always say you cannot have a personal brand without a community, without an audience. You cannot have a personal brand without somebody to witness that personal brand. So the next level should always be how am I leveling up my community? And community, of course, is also different than audience. How people relate to you is going to be different because I always think of audience as really a more of a one-way street, right? You're saying something, you're showing something, and that's the audience for it. But a community is the people that you are trying to have a conversation with, you're trying to have a relationship with. So for me, my next steps are really further growing and expanding my community and diving really deeply into who is maybe part of a more curated community that I want to bring closer to myself. So never done, I've never done, and I'm going to forget the word for it now because now we're recording this, but I've never done a curated small group of people where I've really handheld them and walk them through what it means to grow a very successful personal brand. I've done a lot of mentoring, which is very different, and I've done a lot of consulting one-on-one. But one of the next steps that I'm looking at is, would it be interesting to do a very small group of curated people and allow them to be in a cohort that then I am managing, right?
I
So
love that idea.
yeah,
Sign me up.
yes, exactly. And I've been thinking really deeply about what that would mean and what would be, once again, the infrastructure, right, behind that.
You have to put that
And
together
the
first.
yeah, and what the timing is and what the timing on my end is. Well, how involved would I be? So I think that there's so many different ways you can level up a community, and it doesn't always mean, right, that you are growing from 100 to 300,000. It sometimes means that if you're at 1,000, out of 1,000, that you're curating out 100 people that are your super fans that you want to really invest in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, that's great. Well, tell us a little bit more about your book.
Yes. So my book, Personal Branding for Introverts, which you notice is the same color as my hair. It
Like
is.
green.
Yeah, I like green. And you know what is so funny to me whenever somebody asks, what is this about? I used to say personal branding and introverts.
Well,
But it's about growing your brand online and offline. And I will say this, I've had extroverts read this book and they've said it is a wonderful basic primer for growing your personal brand. So it is meant to be a helpful starting point for if you are starting to think about building your personal brand, or if you are at a phase, a stop in your personal brand where you're thinking, I want to go in a different direction, or I want to elevate it. I want to go to the next step. It is a great book for that. And it is full of ideas, tips, and tactics that will get you there to the next level, that will help grow you beyond where you currently are, and in a very aligned way, in a way that is not exhausting, because I am such a fan of not exhausting yourself in order to build your brand or build your business. So many of us are burnt out constantly. So many of us are miserable in the work that we do. I just actually started 2 Substacks, but one of the Substacks I started is called Analog Joy. And I feel that we need more joy,
yes.
more joy at work. And
Absolutely.
and people are so attracted to and like meeting people who are full of joy and who enjoy what they're doing.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to hang around the people who are having a pity party. That's for sure.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Goldie, if someone wants to connect with you, learn more, how can they find you?
So
And
you
the
can
book.
always find me. Yes, exactly. You can always find me at goldiechan.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Goldie. You can find all the links to order my book also on my website and also wherever books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop is a great place that supports indie bookstores. And you can find it in a lot of your local libraries. And if it's not there, please request it.
Absolutely. Yes. Say, where's the book?
Yes,
So I've got
exactly.
one signature question. You've given us some stories that are very similar, so you'll have to dig deep, I guess. But I always like to ask my guests at the end of my podcast if you can share a story of how an opportunity presented itself to you because of a connection that you had. Or maybe you were able to give someone else an opportunity because of a connection that you had.
Yeah, so one thing that I really believe in is opening doors for others. So oftentimes what I'll do is if I have a keynote and I'm allowed to do a panel, I will bring on a lot of new speakers onto stage. People have never spoken on a
Wow.
stage at a conference before, especially women and people of color, because I want to be a door opener. So when I have that opportunity, I like to curate opportunities for other people who then it is so impactful for them.
I love that. It's not often that I get the stories of how they're opening doors for others. And I think that's just so important. That speaks volumes as to your character. So
Thank you.
that is awesome. So that is our show for today. I hope if our audience loved the show, and I'm sure you did, you got a lot out of it today. Be sure you follow or subscribe. I'm Zelda Greenberg, your host, in addition to this podcast that I produce every single week. Every Tuesday, there's a new episode that comes out. I am your realtor when it comes to life transitions. If you're thinking about moving in the next year or what have you, and you have questions, I've got answers for you to help you come to the right conclusions. So remember, though, that success does not happen in isolation. It happens because of the connections that you have. And today, connections are today's currency, and connections are your power move. So until next week, this is Zelda with Success Through Connections. See you next week.